The story of the De Winton Community Hall is the story of people. Farmers, ranchers, homesteaders, Northwest Mounted Police, all contributing their own thread to the rich fabric of De Winton and southern Alberta. The De Winton Community Hall was built at the end of World War I, but its story and the story of the village of De Winton starts well before then. In 1872, the Dominion Lands Act was passed. The intention of the act was to encourage settlement of the prairies and help prevent the area from being claimed by the United States. Essentially, the act offered incentive for settlers to move west and obtain free land. Commencing with a registration fee of $10, a homesteader was offered a quarter section of land with an undertaking to break the land, a requirement to plant crops, and to remain on the land for 6 months of each year for 3 years. The early settlers were referred to as sodbusters because they had to turn the sod, cultivate to plant crops. Since the western frontier was still a dangerous and lawless territory, the government organized the Northwest Mounted Police to curtail the whiskey trade and bring law and order to southern Alberta. In 1874, under the command of Colonel James McLeod, the ill-equipped troop of Northwest Mounted Police made the arduous journey from Winnipeg to build Fort McLeod. The following year, in 1875, a troop went north to build Fort Calgary. Once the Northwest Mounted Police established Fort McLeod and Fort Calgary, they contracted with the I.G. Baker Company from Fort Benton, Montana, to transport goods and supplies north. At that time, large bull trains were used for this purpose. A bull train typically consisted of 6 to 8 yokes of oxen. Each yoke of 16 animals pulled 3 large wagons closely hitched together. Each wagon carried 6 tons of goods and could only manage about 15 miles per day. One such shipment carried 800 tons of flour, 30 tons of bacon and hams, and 240 tons of supplies like nails, dried fruit, and clothing. These bull trains used an old route named the Old McLeod Trail that was already in use by stagecoaches, horse and buggy, foot traffic, and native persons. Today, you can see the red-painted wagon wheel markers at both De Winton and Pine Creek, where some of the deep wagon ruts are still visible. Since the Old McLeod Trail was a transportation corridor, a stopping house, general store, and blacksmith shop were established relatively early near the Pine Creek Ford or crossing. John and Lucy Owens built the first stopping house and general store in the valley. In 1886, a second stopping house was built to the north of the creek and was operated by the Saunders-Watson family. The Pratt brothers from Scotland, Andrew and Robert, arrived in 1883 and were blacksmiths by trade. Later, they bought the second stopping house and also donated land for the construction of a Presbyterian church. The Pine Creek district was growing and encompassed much of what would later be called the De Winton district. A poignant story about Pine Creek. In 1882, Edward and Christina Robb homesteaded on the north side of the creek. Sadly, in 1889, their 3-year-old daughter died. Since a cemetery did not exist in the area, the family donated land to establish one so Edna could be buried properly. She was laid to rest in the northeast corner of this site with a small headstone and an ironwork fence made by the Pratt brothers. This historic cemetery is one of the oldest in southern Alberta and a remnant of the early settlement at Pine Creek. It is located on the east side of the McLeod Trail, engulfed by residential development. In 1881, the Marquis of Lorne, the Governor-General of Canada, came to Calgary with his military secretary, Major General Francis De Winton. They traveled south on the Old McLeod Trail to inspect the territory and were very impressed by the beauty of the foothills and the farming and ranching operations they observed. In 1883, Sir Francis De Winton raised the funds for a large ranch, 5 miles by 6 miles, and established it south of Calgary on the Bow River. It was called the Breton or De Winton Ranch. The wife of Lord Lorne, Princess Louise Caroline Alberta, was the daughter of Queen Victoria and was quite an attraction in Eastern Canadian society. We have the Marquis of Lorne's love for his wife to thank for renaming the district of Assiniboia to the District of Alberta in 1882, and later for the name of our province. Lake Louise was also named after the popular princess. When the railroad came to Calgary in 1883, it changed the conveyance of goods from bull train to rail train. It wasn't until 1892 that the railroad extended to southern Alberta and caused rapid change to the De Winton area. De Winton was the only designated rail station between Calgary and Okotoks, and of course, it required a name. Yes, it was named after Major General Sir Francis De Winton. As well, the railroad impacted mail service to the area. The De Winton Post Office officially opened in 1894. Mr. Hugh McNeil was the postmaster from 1895 to 1911. De Winton became the mailing address for the district. Mail was distributed 3 times a week to Melrose, Davisburg, and Gladys Ridge. Rail service also caused the settlement at De Winton to grow, and the one at Pine Creek to diminish. Opportunities had opened up for a station agent, section foreman, postmaster, and other associated businesses, as well as for community needs such as churches, schools, meeting and entertainment places. To that end, in 1910, the Anglican Church was moved from Pine Creek to De Winton by teams of horses. Mr. Frank Pashek, who owned the general store, allowed local residents to use the second floor above the store for dances and social events. By 1910, a new hall was built with private funds and was named Streeter Hall after the Reverend Streeter, who enjoyed play acting and producing theatrical events. By 1913, Mr. Harry Usher bought the general store as well as the Streeter Hall property, and the name of the hall became Usher Hall. The early residents of the district realized the importance of an education for their children, so building schools was a high priority. For example, the Davisburg School was built in 1888, Melrose in 1890, and Pine Creek in 1897. These schools were typically one room, one teacher for grades 1 to 9, few school supplies, a wood coal stove in the corner, an outhouse, and a barn to shelter horses. Wives and daughters of the early settlers contributed significantly to farm life. They established their own roles, formed charitable and community associations, and maintained the fashions of the day. Farming in De Winton in the early 1900s was by horsepower and hard labor. Farmers were very dependent on and proud of the strength of their horses. Many in the district owned prize-winning Clydesdales. Early implements were quite basic. However, heavy machinery, tractors, trucks, and automobiles were starting to appear on the scene. Mechanized equipment had an immediate effect on the efficiency of farm operations. The village of De Winton had reached its peak development by 1914, before the Great War started. It was comprised of a train station, stopping house, general store, post office, Anglican church, blacksmith shop, livery stable, dance hall, pool hall, and a cabinet maker. It never really developed beyond that time and remains a small village. When the young men in the district went off to war, the energy and vitality in the community changed. Those at home did what they could to support the war effort and worried about their loved ones overseas. When the war came to an end in 1918 and veterans returned home, there was a renewed vigor in the community. They soon realized that a better facility was required for community events. A public meeting was held in April of 1918 to discuss the building of a new community hall. 2 quotes were obtained for a 40-foot by 60-foot structure. The T. Eaton Company quoted the princely sum of $1,590.91, and Prairie Builders was $1,586.87. The trustees opted to save the $4.04 and selected Prairie Builders. This tells you that money was scarce and a dollar was highly valued. Just to give you a better idea of prices in 1918, a loaf of bread was 7 cents, a pound of butter was 36 cents, a cotton blouse was $1.36, and a wool suit was $26.54. The hall was built in short order by Mr. Alexander Hislop and volunteer help from Mr. Jim Dalzell. The official opening was September 27, 1918. The new De Winton Hall quickly became an important social center for the community. Dances, plays, political meetings, weddings, school fairs, Christmas tree concerts, and sporting activities. A community picnic was an exciting event with ice cream and pop, sack races, men and women's tug-of-wars, 3-legged races, and all sorts of ball games. Other community activities were baseball, swimming in the creek in summer, and ice skating in winter, and even polo, an established sport. In 1927, a cyclone damaged many properties in De Winton, but no lives were lost. Telephone service didn't arrive in the district until 1936. The low voltage lines were shared by several homes and were known as party lines. In January of 1974, after community members had just completed a renovation to the kitchen area of the hall, a fire broke out and completely destroyed the building. The loss of the hall was devastating to the members. Community leaders met to find a solution to this disastrous event. Tragedy turned to the happy realization that a solution was literally in their own backyard. In 1964, the De Winton Community Association had purchased the old De Winton High School, along with 4.8 acres of land from the Foothills School Division for the grand sum of $1,000. It conveniently was joined to the old hall property. Since the school had been vacant since 1955, it was decided to use the school as infrastructure for the new hall. It reopened on November 23, 1974, and was renamed De Winton Community Center. Another serious fire occurred in the kitchen area on September 12, 1996, and caused considerable damage before being extinguished. The board used this unfortunate situation as an opportunity to expand the premises and upgrade the existing facilities. The hall was closed for about a year while work was completed. The official opening of the community center was September 26, 1997, which is pretty much the same building you see today. The reason it was first built in 1918 is the same reason the hall is used today. It is a gathering place for people. The people of De Winton and District.